We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively here at Faidley's. We're at Lexington Market, the new Lexington Market. What kind of fish is that hanging from the ceiling? I don't know. I'm thinking about taking rockfish home with some capers and a beurre blanc. That just means lemon and wine, but they say beurre blanc. We're looking forward to doing that. Our friends at Pac-Man and the Maryland Lottery. I'm not giving the machine away, but you can win the machine if you're here today. We're going to be giving away scratch-offs in the Maryland Lottery. Got the fresh Pac-Mans. They're yellow. I say Towson or UMBC, but not like the Steelers at all. 25th anniversary documentary will be coming out 2 weeks from now on Thursday, draft day, the 25th at 5:08 p.m. If you're an OG, you'll know why it's 5:08. Luke Jones is here. We're at Lexington Market. We've talked a lot of baseball. And the excitement of the Brewers being in town, excitement of Jackson Holiday being up, excitement of 75-degree baseball and pennant race baseball on a daily basis. Dude, it's almost like Chad Steele's feelings are hurt that we're not talking enough football. It's almost like that.
It's nice not to have to talk about football 365 days a year, even though plenty of people still do.
Oh, come on, that's all we do.
And
that's all we do.
As quite a few people like to say, America's favorite sport is the NFL, and second favorite is the NFL offseason. And that's still true in many places, and still true to a point here in Baltimore.
Well, it will be when I release this video, this documentary on the 25th. That's the epicenter of the offseason. I mean, that's literally, that's it. That's a zenith. It doesn't get any bigger than that Thursday night, and then it goes away again a little. Then it goes back to we'll have a camp, or we'll have an arrest, or we'll have a signing, or whatever. But then it's not quiet from a fan base standpoint, but you can't bet on anything anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just wait it out, and the difference here is we're going to have this. We're going to have baseball, which we really have not had a whole lot of over the last 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few years where there have been a little bit of a respite, but now, I mean, this just feels so sustainable long-term that it's going to be a case of, okay, they might not be the World Series favorites this year or every year, but
if
they're going to be up
in
there.
October and you say to me, we'll get them next year, I believe it.
Sure.
I believe it this year.
Yeah, no question about
now,
it.
When the Ravens said, after losing the AFC Championship game, we'll get them next year, you and I from the beginning were like, the perception will be they'll be a diminished team. You went to the Liars luncheon this week, named by me, even though they threw me out. And DeCosta said something that, is cocking it. We'll be good. You watch. You wait. You watch. We'll be good.
In fairness,
he's right.
He's right.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've said that all along. Like, look, I will not step down from the premise that 2023 felt like their absolute best chance when you consider everything at work. Coaching staff extremely talented, and we've seen the names headlined by Mike McDonald to walk out the door since then. The amount, not just their starters, but the amount of depth they had at so many different positions, and that's where it's really taken the hit. They deliberately are rebuilding their offensive line. They could have brought back Kevin Zeitler for not that much money. Morgan Moses was under contract. So they've deliberately said, we're going to rebuild our offensive line.
Around Lamar's best years.
Sure.
Right.
But beyond that, you look at most of what they've lost, and I get it. Patrick Queen starting inside linebacker. Jadeveon Clowney starting outside linebacker. But, when you look at the longer list, it's mainly been depth guys. Now, quality depth guys, but, Geno Stone and guys of that nature.
But those are a lot of downs to replace in those
tough.
positions.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt about it. And
quality downs.
That said, even if we say, all right, maybe they're not going to be, a 13-4 juggernaut that leads the NFL in point differential, leads the NFL in scoring defense, leads the NFL in takeaways, leads the NFL in sacks, has the MVP at quarterback, although certainly he's done it twice. Why are you going to bet against him again? But even if they don't have all those things quite to that degree, they're still a playoff team. They're still a legitimate contender in the AFC. Now, do they rank at the top? Well, Kansas City showed them last year that ranking at the top in the regular season only means so much. So the point is, and this is where it goes back to what Eric said and what John was very bullish, kind of went out of his way to offer a 2-minute monologue kind of about the idea of just year-to-year roster building. They're still in a great spot. They still have such a great core of young players that
that is how you
on
win.
Both sides of the ball.
That's at the base of what they say.
We
want to be
stars.
competitive every year and be good enough that we can get that burst to win 13 or 14 games and host an AFC Championship game. But believing you're going to do that 2 years in a row, if Bisciotti were sitting here, he'd say, Other teams are going to have.
We'll see.
We're going to have bad luck at some point. We had bad luck 2 years ago. Cincinnati had bad luck last year.
Or maybe it's, as we have kind of flippantly said, but I also think there's something to it at this point. Maybe it's that they aren't this juggernaut in the regular season, but guess what? Then the bounces go their way in January. And that's really what's going to make people happy at this point anyway.
But part of this team and the way they've been constructed is not to have to go on the road and play. They were constructed from a Lamar standpoint.
But they've also been really good on the road, though. You know what I mean? They haven't had issues on the road with Lamar as quarter. They've lost some games here and there.
Winning playoff games on the road in Buffalo, Cincinnati, Kansas City would be a very daunting task. I think it'd be very daunting.
It's a daunting task every year.
Right, but if you're a wild card, it's even worse.
It is, but I guess the point I'm making is we're going to talk about all these different things, and with the draft, I've got the depth chart here that I put together.
He's a professional reporter.
Where it stands right now. But the point is, with all of that, none of it matters until the second week of January. I mean, that's just where we are right now. We're going to talk about all of it because we all love it, and they're going to play games. And yes, of course, they have to be good enough in the regular season to qualify for the playoffs, get there, because you can't just snap your fingers and you're there in January. As to your point, we found out a couple years ago, the injury-plagued season. But it's all about January. So from that standpoint, anything they do, even if you told me it looked better on paper than it did last year, I'll say, okay, what's January going to look like? How's Lamar playing January? How's the coaching staff functioning? Are they going to panic as they feels like they do panic?
Are they going to use Derrick Henry?
Yeah, right, exactly. You signed Derrick Henry, you're going to use him in the AFC Championship game. So, and I don't say that to be dismissive. I think that's where everyone is at this point. Doesn't mean
they can't win a game and the Orioles can win 3 games this weekend.
Sure.
Right? I mean, that really is the difference of having the heartbeat of a 2-sport town.
Sure.
Or in places like Philadelphia or Boston or New York where they're a 4-sport or a 6-sport or an 8-sport town.
Yeah.
That we've been a 1-sport town here for a long time. And just the fact that we're sitting here in Faidley's on a Friday afternoon, sitting here talking about football a little bit and baseball a lot of bit, and people are coming by looking for Jackson Holiday number 7 jerseys and crab cakes. What is on your mind? 2 weeks from now we're going to release this documentary that night at 5:08. They're going to draft probably at 10:15 at night or whatever. They're not going to trade back up into the first round. They don't have the firepower to move from 30 to 18.
If anything, they're going to move backwards.
Correct. So,
which someone in the know down in Orlando absolutely put that out there. Now, again, everything said by anyone between now and the draft, in one ear, out the other.
I called it the liar's lunch.
Well, not just that, but this is just lying season in general around the NFL. So, but, what I'm looking for, I think at this point in time, especially, you and I haven't talked about it too much, but they re-signed Kyle Van Noy.
Okay.
So outside linebacker looks better.
Well, if you
not as good as last year.
You'd want Clowney.
Yes, but you wanted one or the other. I think going into the offseason, I think we both recognized that you weren't going to keep both those guys. You needed to keep one. And then you're hoping Owe takes the next step after a better season this past year than he had his second year, which was a disappointment.
Or you see a Jabo.
A Jabo's got to be on the field. We'll see about Tavius Robinson, who got his feet wet this past year as a rookie. We'll see if they draft an edge. But, for the most part, you look at them on both sides of the ball, most positions, while certainly they could augment, certainly they can improve, it's the offensive line that you say, okay, there's still work there. Not depth. Not a backup center.
Players, starters.
But starters, right. And, okay, maybe they have a couple of them. Maybe Ben Cleveland's going to be the right guard. Maybe Andrew Voorhees is going to be the left guard. But who's going to be the right tackle? Are you counting on both those guard spots to be filled internally?
I'm wondering what the left tackle looks like in Week 12.
Well, but
I really do.
Sure, we know he's going to be there. But to your point, if you have this rebuilt offensive line, you feel great about Linderbaum. After that, it's kind of a shoulder shrug. Look, I think what they did with Ronnie Stanley with the pay cut, restructuring the deal, I think I said that all along.
They had to do it.
That was going to be the best.
And it doesn't make him healthier.
But it makes the contract more tenable. They voided the last year, so he's
look at what
now
Buffalo did with Diggs.
Yeah,
right?
But he's now in a contract season, so he has plenty of incentive to play. Not just incentives to make back, to make him whole for this year, but also, hey, playing for a new contract, whether it's in Baltimore or the Steelers go sign you, whoever. But there are big-time question marks with the offensive line. Right now, if you ask me,
Yeah,
Luke,
they go play
they
this
have to play a
weekend.
game
Yeah,
this week.
yeah.
Ronnie Stanley at left tackle, left guard, I think is Voorhees or Josh Jones, who they, depth guy that they signed.
Talked a lot about Voorhees, right?
Tyler, but he's yet to practice once,
I
right?
understand
I mean, that's why they drafted him.
Play this week.
That's why they drafted him last year. Yeah,
right.
That's why they drafted him in the 7th round, knowing it was a redshirt year.
Wake me at the 3rd preseason game, and I'll let you know if we got a player or not.
Ben, sure, and even then it's maybe.
Still
but
August.
Right guard, Ben Cleveland. Right tackle, probably Patrick McCary, because I don't think Fa'alele is a starter. I don't think he really
fits. They don't
fits.
have their right tackle on the.
I don't think they do either. Yeah,
we're reading from this, and we're playing
Sure.
internet games here and saying, all right, two of these positions, left guard, right tackle, are going to be filled
so that's
by
where,
somebody we've never heard of.
Right. Well, people have heard of them, but it might be Amarius Mims. It might be Tyler Guyton. It might be someone at 30. It might be someone they trade into the 2nd round, and maybe it's someone there. And then you get into scenarios where that's where Patrick McCary is extremely valuable, where you say, all right, we draft a guy. We think he's going to be our right tackle this year. We think he has long-term left tackle potential, but Ronnie's going to be there at least one more year or until he gets hurt, one or the other.
Brown type of draft.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. J.O. played left guard. They had Tony Jones in '96. It was still a heck of a left tackle. So
Jackson Holliday's playing second and batting 9th.
Yeah,
He's going
exactly.
to be playing second base and batting 9th forever.
I mean, it might be Gunner moving to 3rd.
I don't think he's going to be
whatever.
Joe Morgan when it is all over with.
Probably not, but for right now, that's how it fits. But whoever that is, knowing the learning curve of offensive linemen going from the collegiate level to the NFL, that guy might not be ready week 1. So that, to me, that might be a scenario where maybe Patrick McCary's your starting right tackle for first 3 weeks, first month of the season, and then you hand the reins over to the young guy. You have to have contingency plans. We were talking about this in a previous segment, talking about the Orioles pitching. Like, okay, Bradish and Means right now, there's a lot of unknown, but that doesn't mean Dean Kramer's not going to have an issue at some point, or Burns won't tweak his hamstring and has to miss 2.5 weeks at some point in June. So you have to have depth. You have to have contingencies. You have to have all the scenarios. And where the Ravens stand right now, the O-line is where you say,
well, the draft is about depth.
We need a couple
4
dudes.
Players? 4 offensive linemen in the draft, 3? What do you expect?
I mean, I think 2 is the absolute minimum, and I think when I say 2, that would be like 2 in the first 4 rounds. If it's a case where you say it's your first-round pick, a 3rd-round pick, and then maybe there's a 5th-round guy. They seem, if you look most years,
they've had drafts where they take 2 tight ends.
Yeah. I mean, but
they don't have any offensive linemen.
But if you look, right, I mean, they have linemen, but they're a bunch of unproven guys. I mean,
you better hope you can do better in this draft, especially where. Whenever you put the NFL Network on or ESPN, go anywhere the draft, offensive line is the depth part of this draft, right?
Yeah.
According to everyone.
Oh, sure.
That's why I'm thinking they're going to go deeper into it because that's where they are in their roster.
That said, I think the other thing you have to be careful with, and this is not for the Ravens, this is, I think, teams in general. When you have a position that's regarded as very deep, and I'll use wide receiver because we've talked about that a lot over the years with the Ravens drafting wide receivers. And I can recall years where it was regarded as a pretty deep wide receiver draft. And I think the Ravens, to a fault, and I think they've even acknowledged that years later, Eric's acknowledged and said, hey, there are probably times we should have taken swings earlier in drafts for that position. But I think you also run the risk when you say it's really deep, it's really easy to say, we'll get a guy later. We'll trade back or we'll go with this guy.
You get the later guy.
Make sure you get a couple legitimate starting options. Certainly at right tackle. Look, if you're talking about 2nd round and after, it's ambitious to assume a guy's going to start. Can it happen? Yes.
Or to think you're going to use a 3rd-round pick and replace Marlon Humphrey with that 2 years from now.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's part of this too. I mean, offensive line's the one position where you say, all right, they clearly have some need. But let's not act like there aren't other positions where there's either some need or let's say you really, really want a guy. You mentioned Marlon Humphrey. Look, he's back. I'm not going to throw dirt on him whatsoever, but this is a big year for him when you consider where his compensation is.
Well, him and Stanley both to have been paid and for them to not have won a championship and for both of them to have had injuries. Yeah. And we've seen this song
More so Ronnie, but yeah.
We've seen this song before with Jimmy Smith at the corner position or offensive line with J.O. where the toe went bad and all of a sudden he goes from a Hall of Famer to retired and what are we going to do, right? They know or they believe they know they're toward the end with Ronnie Stanley. There's not going to be another contract for him here.
Yeah.
In the same way that the Orioles would look at Santander or Mullins or some of these guys.
And if there is,
it's
not going to be a contract that has 9 digits.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, right?
It's like, oh, maybe it's 2 years, $15 million or something like that.
In the case of Marlon Humphrey, I'm not in the building anymore, Chad. But me hears that Marlon's not the most popular guy in the building, and if you follow him on Twitter, you'd wonder how he has a friend in the world. And if you ever met him, you wouldn't want to meet him again. But all that being said, when a guy's making that kind of money and not playing to that kind of level, and you're looking at where are we going to be a year or two from now, to your point, you're looking at, in baseball, arbitration guys or number guys or big salary guys. I mentioned Stephon Diggs and what the Bills did with him and just said, too much money, too much headache, too much cap, too much. We'll take the hit. And the Bills have just, I mean, wouldn't we be doing sports radio in Buffalo right now?
I was just going to say, we're talking about
the year the Ravens do that to their roster.
Yeah.
And just saying, we're done with Lamar. We made a mistake. Let's just, undo everything. It's not a head scratcher. It's a control thing for the organization, but it's also an admission of a mistake.
Yeah.
An admission that we gave that guy a lot of money and we don't want him anymore. And when you give that guy that money, whether it's Ronnie Stanley, Marlon Humphrey, Lamar Jackson, you give that guy that money, you better make sure you want that guy.
Well, but we also have to remember these deals, NFL deals, are not what they say they are, right? I mean, a 5-year deal is oftentimes a 3-year deal with 2 team options, right?
But that cap number is real when you start pushing, kicking it down.
Well, it depends how much guaranteed money there is.
Right now, the franchise is F for 5 years.
Of course,
there's
just
so
like
much money in
Patrick
one player.
Mahomes would be the same way. Josh Allen.
So much in one
the Bills
player.
are already looking like they're screwed even with Josh Allen. But yeah, so I'm looking at it right now. I mean, Marlon Humphrey, as his contract's currently constructed, without any adjustments, his cap number for this year is just under $23 million. Next year, it's $25 million. So if he's not playing like a Pro Bowl corner, then there's going to be a difficult conversation next year. I mean, there's no doubt. Or if he's hurt again in the way that he was hurt this past year. So, yeah, there's some of that at work. But also, this is also the natural cycle of how this, of young players coming in. Young players like Ronnie Stanley and Marlon Humphrey were 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
Both
they
of those
get
guys got paid, and the thought was they could go to the Hall of Fame at that point. They both were really, really elite players when they were signed. Neither one of them are going to the Hall of Fame at this point, and they better hang on to win a championship because we haven't won a lot of playoff games with them here either.
Sure. Well, I mean,
Lamar gets all of that. These guys don't get that.
I understand.
And that's unfair.
Right. I understand what you're saying. At the same time, that's a very big canyon between kind of where they are now and saying they're Hall of Fame players.
No, but I'm saying when you give a guy that kind of contract.
Sure. And look, we weren't having this conversation about Marlon Humphrey a year ago. He missed 8 games this year. Like, he had foot surgery in August, and then he had the calf issue at the end of the season. But he missed a lot of time. And when you are getting older, and I think so much of this is also you have a quarterback now on a lucrative contract that starting next year, his cap numbers will be well north of 40. Next year I think is like $44 million. And then after that, that's when they'll redo the deal because it goes to like $70 million or whatever it is. So he'll get an extension at that point. But in the case of someone like Humphrey, Stanley's not a great example because he's already been cut and he's on a contract year as it is. But in the case of Marlon, who still has some time left on this deal, you're also looking at this through the lens of at the end of 24, Tyler Linderbaum will be eligible for an extension. Pro Bowl center, looking like a guy who could be an all-pro center for a number of years. Kyle Hamilton, you want to talk about, Ronnie Stanley and Marlon Humphrey, both Pro Bowl players at their best. No questions about that. Kyle Hamilton, to me, the guy 2 years in, looks like he could be a Hall of Fame player. That's how special he looks. So he'll be eligible for an extension after after your 3rd year is when you're eligible. So that doesn't mean it's going to happen next offseason, but this is what you have to start looking at, where you say, okay, who are our new marquee high-priced guys? Matabike is in that category now. Yeah, sure. So and part of this is
and Roquan graduated into it from the beginning.
Sure. Right. And Roquan needs to play.
And Mark Andrews.
Mark
Andrews getting paid.
Roquan as an inside linebacker at a position that's not premium, he's got to continue to be an absolute stud all-pro. If he's only just good, then that's a value concern. So, I mean, I'm not saying this specific to the Ravens. Every city, every NFL market that has sports talk radio could have the same exact conversation.
Stars have to be stars.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's where it comes back to the beginning where all of this attrition they've endured, they have stars on both sides of the ball still. Now, offensive line's a major question mark. Where's Rashad Bateman this year? Where's Odafe Owe this year for the edge rush? So you have some of these pivotal
Zay
guys.
Flowers the next year too.
Zay
as well.
Flowers taking the next step.
Sure.
Yeah. So you have some of that, but you've got bona fide stars on both sides of the ball, starting with an MVP quarterback, which is still really, really important.
Him yet,
yeah, exactly.
He's pretty good.
So look. Do I think they're going to be as formidable as they were last year, or as formidable as they were in 2019, where, again, best record in the NFL, leading point differential, all those different factors? Probably not, because even if they get this offensive line where they draft guys they like, it's probably going to have some growing pains, because that's just how this works. I mean, you need time to build
especially on the O-line.
But that said, I still, right now, not even knowing who they're going to draft or knowing who they're going to sign between now and September or even after the season starts. Right now, are they a playoff team? Absolutely. I don't even think twice about it, assuming you don't have a run of injuries that would derail any team. So
King Henry.
So they still have, they've got some questions, but they still have so much going for them. And I think when you look at this draft where, and Eric said it, there wasn't a whole lot of notable takeaways from the Liars Luncheon. Big shock, I know. But he said, this is going to be a year of opportunity. Like, we're going to be drafting some guys who there's going to be a pathway for them to start if they earn it. Whereas some years in recent years, you haven't really said that as much. You've kind of looked at a guy and you drafted him and said, well, okay, Owe will be our number 3 outside linebacker, or Rashad Bateman will be our number 3 wide receiver, or, whatever it is. So
yeah, but if the Bowsers step up, you don't wind up signing Van Noy.
Sure.
Right? I mean, and
sure.
If Owe stepped up, you wouldn't have signed Clowney.
Yeah, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where I'm saying,
And look, that's going to happen. I mean, you're not going to bat 1,000 in free agency or the draft.
Well, the Dobbins injury really set the whole organization back in a tremendous. You and I talk about Mark Ingram all the time. We talk about King Henry and everything that's happened in between.
Yeah.
What happened in between is they put a lot of their draft resources into a second-round pick that they thought was a stud.
When he was healthy.
Every time he stood up was a stud. Every time.
Yeah, just couldn't stay healthy.
Yeah. And that really effed with their prosperity and they won a lot of games.
Hey,
but it really messed with them.
On top of that, after what happened with Dobbins, and okay, it was a contract year. From the moment he tore his Achilles, I think we all knew he's played his last game as a Raven, barring something very strange. But to make matters worse, here you hit it out of the park with Keaton Mitchell, looking like what he did. And look, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have drafted or they wouldn't have wanted to add another running back, but if Keaton Mitchell's fully healthy now, I'm not sure you're dropping $9 million on a running back the way they are right now. So they lose him to a torn ACL in mid-December. So you've dealt with this with Dobbins the last couple of years. Oh, by the way, you lost Gus Edwards back in 21 as well.
They've had bad luck with running
backs. They
have.
Yeah. And that's kind of what's amazing, and this is where we kind of get into the positional value, the debate you and I have had so much, where even with some of their challenges at running back, they've still had a number 1 ranked running attack. So that's where I just say, they've made it work. So, but you bring in Derrick Henry now, and look, it's go time. He better be great. Your running game better be great. There better not be any issues with your running game. And
I hope he's great because I've been pimping for him for 3 years.
But that's where we go back to. You still got to figure out the offensive line.
I wouldn't want to tackle him. I'll tell you that.
Oh,
Derrick Henry.
You think? You think?
Luke Jones is here. We are promoting our friends at the Barrel of the Lottery, Pac-Man, but we're here at the all-new Lexington Market, the new Faidley's. It's got big space. I can yell here, and nobody can even hear me yell because it's got ambient noise. Beautiful stalls. And right across from the Park Fried Chicken, right here on Packer Street. We're on the backside. I can see and I keep calling the stadium, and Janet Marie gets upset with me.
The ballpark.
Correct. Charles Steinberg sets a $5 fine for Larry Lucchino every time you call it a stadium. So I can see the ballpark lights from here. The stadium's on the other side. I can't see that. And we're down here at Faidley's. Come on down. We're going to be here every Friday from about 2 to 5 hanging out. Sheila Dixon's going to join us today. Shannon Sneed's going to join us running for city offices. Also, Damien Hahn is going to be with us talking about this magnificent new facility and structure. And it's just like the old Faidley's, except newer and shinier and newer equipment and awesomeness. So come on down. Make sure you get a beer here before the game. If you're down here any Friday in the near short term, I'll have some Pac-Man scratch-offs to give away, but I will have scratch-offs here every Friday that the Orioles are home this year. Don't come down on the Fridays when the Orioles are away and say, you weren't there, Nancy. just for the home games, all right? So we're going to do that.
They could still come down to Faidley's, but you won't be here.
I won't be here. You don't need me. What's here's come on the Fridays when we're not here. Be less of a crowd. You can
That's what I'm saying.
Easier have a good weekend at the ballpark. I'm under review. I don't know. Maybe you'll see me in the press box. Maybe you won't.
Hopefully soon, at the very least, soon. It's been too long.
You need a day off. You haven't had one off in 15 years. So,
hey, I can't say anything. Cal Ripken's back in the organization, so there's no days off, right?
You'll tell that to Cal or Billy. All right. We're at Faidley's. I'm Nestor. We're going to come back here, continue having conversations. If you've heard any of our conversations this week with Keith Brewer, with John Allen, the 25th anniversary of our documentary, No One Listens, Everyone Hears. That's the name of our documentary. It's coming out on the 25th, April 25th. Luke's in it. I'm in it. My mother's in it. My family's in it. Anybody that's ever been associated with WNST, I've tried to get them, sneak them in there. If you're not in there, I apologize ahead of time. But we're going to launch that at 5:08 p.m. on the 25th of April in advance of the NFL Draft. Big thanks to Greg Landry over at Towson Transfers and Blue Rock Productions. He's flying to Spain this week. That's like a song, like I've never been to heaven, but I've never been to Spain. So he's going to Spain this week, but the movie's coming out on the 25th. We'll be back here on the 26th with these Pac-Man giveaways. We have punted on our Coco's Crab Cake Day. Something about a Springsteen concert in Syracuse. I don't know, Marty Conway. But we're going to be doing the show in Coco's in early June. We'll be back here on the 26th. We're also going to be at Greenmount Station and the Greenmount Bowl on the 24th of April. That's a Wednesday up in Carroll County with my pal David Richardson and Chris from Greenmount Station talking about crab cakes and talking about the racing industry, the horse racing industry. Big news out of Annapolis there. I'm chasing Bill Ferguson down to get some dirt on that as well. Luke's going to the ballpark. I'm going to get a crab cake and a beer. We're at Faidley. Stay with us. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.